welcome back to the Tech Time podcast. It's great to have you guys here. Matt, how are you doing out there in Canada?
Doing great. We are scorching hot, Dan. It's 32 degrees today Celsius,
Oh,
which I
that is
think is
scorching.
like up in the 90s,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think that just 2 months ago we were at minus 30 and now we're at plus 30. Like, that's just insane.
And it all has to do with how the earth is tilted and wobbling, right? I don't know.
Yay, tilted. Well,
Yeah.
the earth is flat, Dan.
Oh, that's right. There's actually a lot of podcasts about that. This is not one of them.
There was a convention here in Edmonton last summer, and I really wanted to go just to laugh at the people.
What kind of a person would go to that?
I don't know, but there's enough that they came to Edmonton. I don't know if there was 20 or 200. I have no idea.
I'm really disappointed that that would even happen in Canada, you know?
I know.
That's a little bit disappointing.
But you know what they should do is build a rocket that they can go inside and launch it to prove that. Oh, wait a minute. They did that, and the guy almost died.
I don't remember hearing that story, but that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I have a story to tell you about technology. So yesterday I went to the beach. It's Memorial Day
Yeah.
here in the States, and we went to this fish taco place. And while we were there, we all wanted to get these pictures of us eating fish tacos, you know, at the ocean.
Yeah.
And so this random person was like, "Oh, I'll help you take that picture." And so he took the picture for us, and he was actually a neurosurgeon at one of the hospitals close by.
Yeah.
You could tell because of his jacket, right? And then he
Because
kept
he was
saying,
rich.
"Yeah."
Said
Well, we were at the beach.
neurosurgeon. Was he wearing his scrubs?
No, it just said neurosurgeon. A little bit of a douchey maneuver, right? But he was wearing his jacket.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you wear a jacket that says you're a project manager?
Yes, project manager. No,
No. Anyway, so he took the picture and then he said, "Man, your cell phone's so small. I forgot what this was like. These cell phones are so old." Because remember, if you're watching on YouTube, this is the iPhone SE. And I was like, "Oh, no, it's not that old. It's just they're still selling them." He's like, "No, this is like 4 or 5 years old. I mean, I've never seen one of those for years."
as a neurosurgeon, I'd never even lower myself to buy one.
As a neurosurgeon, all of my phones are at least 7 or 8 inches. But anyways, it was just a solid reminder that, phones are getting bigger. They're
Yeah.
getting harder to put in your pocket, and that's what people want. And in fact, have you noticed a lot of women are using those circular things on
Yes,
the back of their
handles.
phone?
Yeah,
I think it's ridiculous, personally. I think
I do too. It makes it
some
fat.
it makes it fat. How are you going
Do
to
I
put
look
that
fat in these pants? No, but your phone does. Because your phone's in those pants.
I see a bulging disc in your pants. Makes no sense to me. And even if you had a purse, like, wouldn't you want to fit other stuff in that? I mean, it makes it twice as thick, right?
But you can hold it like your Spock.
Oh, you know what they need to do?
No.
Just make the phone have a little bit of a ridge or something. Don't make it twice as fat. How are people making millions of dollars off of this circular wedge?
They love it. Maybe it's really good for when you're sitting on the toilet and you don't want to have butterfingers.
So is that really all people use it for, is just to hold on to it better?
I think you can use it as a stand. Like if you're watching a video, you can prop it up with it, I think. But really, it's a handle. It's a handle so that you can walk around. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got lots to talk about. I noticed you had a few articles up here. What's been going on with technology this week, Matt?
Oh, yes, I love technology. Always and forever. Name that movie.
Well, I'm not going to name it, but we are going to start our podcast every time
with that song. But if you know it, put it in the comments and we'll give you a shout out in our next podcast.
Well, they're going to shout out to you every time because it's our new theme song.
It's our new theme song. Forget the Tech Time song.
Yeah.
So Computex is going on right now in Taiwan. And are you familiar with what Computex is?
No, but is it kind of like a big computer show, I guess, except for they get to eat at night markets afterwards, which makes me very jealous.
Yes, they do eat at night markets. And it looks like they've got some pretty decent weather there too at the time. Right now. So it's in Taiwan, and Computex 2019, I don't know if it moves around, but it's really a big show to talk about computer chips, specifically processors, and then laptops and desktops that will be using those processors. Sometimes they'll talk about RAM, sometimes they'll talk about graphics cards, but usually the gaming stuff waits for E3, which is coming up in June. And so Computex is usually like the innards. So a lot of motherboards get announced there as well. So for game enthusiasts, it's kind of an exciting time. And since I've just started getting into building computers again.
Yeah, are you still doing that? Are you thinking about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just trying to bide my time and see like what makes the most money in dollar sense because Dan, you and I both spawn from the same tree where we watch our dollars and it
We're
needs to be
cheap.
worth it.
Yeah.
We are cheap, and I also find that I'm drawn to the expensive components, and then I'm like, why? I mean, who cares if I'm playing P-Bug at like 14K and 120 frames per second, right? Like just drop it to 1080p and away you go. And I'm not a huge gamer. Like I'm not. Most of the games I play, like Civ 6. Civ 6 is a newer game and you need an okay graphics card, but it doesn't need to be smoking awesome. And you don't care about your frames per second because it's not all about reaction times because it's a strategy game. But anyways, still really exciting news came out of Computex, especially the keynote from AMD. And the key thing about AMD is they've been behind Intel for the last few years. So when they first came out with their chips in, I think it was 2012, they really blew everybody away with how many cores they could put into their chips and how fast they could get them overclocking and then the price point. That's what it was all about. And back then it was exciting to get an AMD chip. And they probably kept on top of it for a couple of years. But then I would say from about 2014 to 2018, Intel's had the show. They've been able to get their chips overclocking much higher. Even their base gigahertz is higher than what AMD has been having. And really, AMD's been more on the budget side of things. So they've still stayed cheaper than Intel, but for the enthusiast, it's just always been Intel, Intel, Intel until this year. And all the reviewers, all the people who are looking at this new 3000 series of chips that AMD has been announcing, they're like, Intel can't keep up. In fact, Intel tried to steal some thunder by announcing one of their mega overclocked i9 chips, and they're like, all these cores, all 8 cores are working at 5 gigahertz. And so they tried to steal the thunder, but they, even with that announcement, with this super awesome card that's probably going to cost $3,000, they could not keep it away from the news. So here it is. It's the 3000 series. So every year, AMD adds another 1,000 to it. So last year was the 2000 series. The year before that was the 1000 series. And the year before that was a 0. So here we are in the 3000 series, and then the next number shows how good the chip is. So they've announced a 3700, a 3800, and a 3900. Now, the 3900 is the one that's blowing everybody away because, Dan, it has 12 cores.
And it's only $500?
Right, you stole my thunder. Yeah, it's $500. Now, that's the MSRP, the manufactured retail price that they recommend. So it most likely won't be $500 when it first comes out, but AMD chips, they are able to get enough out there that it's only going to be a month or two and then they'll be down to MSRP. So you can get 12 cores and you can overclock this sucker and you can get it up to 4.6 gigahertz. And that's pretty smoking. All 12 cores at 4.6 gigahertz. Dang. And hyper-threaded to 24 cores.
So I just want to step in here, and I bet there's a lot of people thinking, why would you ever want something that fast? I can play my games okay, but as YouTube creators, when we're compiling our videos, it takes time. It literally takes about 30 minutes on my newest MacBook Pro to do a 45-minute video for YouTube. And so all 12 cores going really quick would probably cut that a lot.
So your MacBook Pro's probably got an Intel chip in it.
Yeah, it does.
Is it an i7?
I think it's an i5. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're so expensive. That's the problem with Apple. They're so expensive, and you got an i5, and it's all about the cores. And I think the i5 is sitting at 4 cores. And
It is, yeah, it's just
yeah,
4 cores.
and then depending on the year, maybe you got 6 cores in it, but the i9s have 8,
Right.
and this one's got 12 cores.
Jeez.
Now there's room on the chip for up to 16. So that's the big rumor right now, and people are saying they've seen it, and maybe later on this year they're actually going to bring out a 16-core chip, so like 32 hyper-threaded cores. That's ridiculous. So the other amazing thing about this is it only uses 105 watts. Now, to
Oh,
give
that's
you
really good.
an example of what 105 watts gets you, that used to be their like 4-core um, chip at 105 watts. So now they're cranking out 3 times as many cores, and they've got the same wattage. So amazing. And then as they go through, so the 3800 and the 3700, they're both at 8 cores, and they're Ryzen 7. So that's the other thing I should tell you is these are all 7 level, like the 7 level on
Sure.
their score. So they've got a Ryzen 5 and a Ryzen 3, but the Ryzen 7s are the high-end gaming ones, and they're still so cheap, like $500, and you get 12 cores on their high-end chip. And so as you go lower, they use less wattage. And so the big news that they're talking about is why use an Intel chip, which is going to be burning 30 to 40% more wattage in a laptop in the future? And
Yeah, good point. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you are mining Bitcoin, it's going
yeah,
to be a lot smarter for you to use something with less watts because then you're going to pay the power company less.
it's all about the dollars, absolutely. And so the wattage is huge. So the Ryzen 7 3800X, X stands for overclockability, but you know what, Dan? Or actually, I think in this case it's extreme, and maybe only their 7 series gets the extreme. It's the selling hype. But this one is 8 cores, sitting at 3.8 gigahertz, overclockable to 4.5. It's 105 watts as well, and it's also it's coming in at $399. So that's $150 cheaper than the Intel comparable. Oh, and to compare the 12 core one, Intel's competitor is a 9920X. It's
Mhm.
going for $1,200 right now.
And it's not even as fast, right? And it doesn't
It's
have
not even
12
as
cores.
fast. Not even as fast, and it's 8 cores, not 12 cores. So ridiculous. And then the 3700X Ryzen 7 is coming in at 329, also has 8 cores, 3.6 gigahertz, overclockable to 4.4, and only 65 watts. That's
So
amazing.
I don't want to put a damper on this. I mean, I know AMD is awesome and they've been around for a while.
Yes.
One thing that I'm hesitant about with AMD is that there are some Linux distros that it just doesn't work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other compiler issues if you're coding software. Um, Even sometimes when you're playing games, I mean, there's just certain things that the CPU needs to have. I remember one time I had an AMD chip. It was a long time ago. Like they weren't as good as Intel at the time, but I had purchased it because it was cheaper. And I
Mm-hmm.
ran into situations where I would try and install a Linux distro or install some kind of a package on it, and it just wasn't compatible. Most of it
Mm.
was emulation. I was like emulating Super Nintendo games, or
Yeah.
I was I don't know. I just like to tinker, and I found sometimes with AMD that I got stuck at a wall. So if you're a hardcore gamer or if you really like to dabble with Unix, I don't know if this AMD chip is for you, even though it's cheaper.
I'd like to know if that's still an issue because I've done a lot of research on this and I haven't heard anything about the Ryzen series of chips. So Ryzen have been the ones that have for the last 3 years. So this is the third generation. I haven't heard anything about that. No complaints. The biggest thing that they've said is it's bang for buck better, but if you want higher gigahertz, always go Intel until now.
Okay, interesting.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I
I mean,
think
this was like 10 years ago when I
yeah.
was, doing emulation and stuff, and it
Mhm.
would it would complain, but yeah, maybe they've got it all worked out.
Yeah, maybe our listeners can chime in on that, but I'd like to know, have you ever had quality issues with your AMD chips, and are they within the last 3 years? Are they these Ryzen chips? Because I haven't heard any of that. And it sounds like in the future, a lot of people are saying your laptops are going to end up with AMDs, and that's pretty rare because most of the time it's Intel has been focusing on that. And so just a few other things. We'll quickly go through this because Intel tried to have a keynote as well, and it was not nearly as exciting as AMD's. The other thing is these are 7 nanometers, these chipsets that they're putting out now. And that is huge, 7 nanometers. To compare that, Intel just got down to 10 nanometers. So in their big thing, they're like, we got to 10 nanometers. But even when their VP was doing his announcement, he didn't do it with nearly as much excitement because they'd just been upstaged the night before with, we got 7 nanometers. like it's a big deal. So
do you want to know how many nanometers my latest MacBook Pro is? It's 22.
22.
I know.
Just bought that last year, Dan.
3 times. I know, 3 times the size.
Oh, that's ridiculous. So Lisa Su is the CEO for AMD, and she also got up there and she said all these CPUs are 15% faster. Every single core is 15% faster than last year's, and 18% faster on multi-core. So huge improvement just from second generation to third generation. And she also made the announcement, and we talked about this last week, I believe, that the PlayStation 5 is going to be using these chips. So AMD is not only taking care of the processor, but they're also doing the graphics card. So it's going to be a combination of the Navi GPU and Zen 2 CPU.
Nice.
Yeah. So the other thing is these are going to become available on July 7th. So 7/7. And you know why?
Why? Because it's 7 nanometers?
7 nanometers. They're really sticking it to Intel.
Guess what I'll be doing on the 22nd? Crying because mine is 22 nanometers.
22 nanometers, 3 times as big as these ones. And the other cool thing is these now support PCI Express 4.0. And that is double than PCI Express 3.0, which is at 1 gigabyte per lane. Now we're at 2 gigabytes per lane, so huge. So if these next generation graphic cards come out and they can handle Express 4.0, just imagine how much information you'll be able to just push from all your components into that motherboard. So it's looking like it's pretty exciting.
Well, just to give you an idea of how far they've come, the last time I bought a fancy video card, they didn't even have PCI Express 1. So now they're at 4.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it's the same thing, Dan. Last time I built my own computer and I was using thermal paste and I was trying to put like a fan on top of my chip, it was like 2010.
Okay.
Right? So we're talking almost 10 years since I've built a computer, and I'm really looking forward to building one with the kids and, just walking them through a motherboard and what's a PCI Express slot and what's it for and what's cache and, all those types of things that I think, we kind of need to know, especially if we end up in a zombie apocalypse and we got to rebuild the world again, then we need to know these things.
Do you remember in Jurassic Park when that family was like stuck and the raptors were after them, and then that girl got to the computer lab and she knew how to use Unix.
She knew how to use it.
She saved the day, she rebooted the system. These are life skills you need to know.
That was way more believable than when they hopped in the Jeeps that were just sitting there forever. Oh, but that wasn't in the original Jurassic Park, it was in the next one. It was like 10 years later and they're like, hey, this Jeep just starts up, no problem. Maybe they can put a new battery, like they tried to be somewhat realistic, but it's like the fuel that has been sitting in there for 10 years. No.
In the hot Costa Rican sun.
That's not going to happen. So another cool thing that AMD announced is they talked about their next generation GPUs, graphics cards.
Oh, yeah.
So usually these get announced at E3, and Lisa Su did say, look, we'll give you more information at E3, but they're calling them the 5000 series. It was supposed to be the third generation, and also these are built on 7 nanometers. We're expecting big things out of these cards, but they're doing the 5000 series because it's AMD's 50th anniversary.
Ooh, wow. I didn't realize they were 50 years old.
Yeah, there's also a rumor going around that Intel went out and bought all the trademarked 3000 and 4000 series names. So they may have been like, we'll go to 5000 and say it's 50th anniversary. So
it's because it's our 50th anniversary.
That's a rumor. But anyways, I'm looking forward to these chips. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when the third-party reviewers look at them and say, are these really as smoking fast as we think they are? And then will the software keep up? I think they will. I think we'll see some really cool stuff come out of this. Although one of the downsides is these chips get so hot, they're starting to build fans into the motherboards again.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if anybody remembers from 12 years ago when they started building fans into motherboards. They were just terrible. They would break all the time and super loud, and you couldn't just crack them open and put a new fan in. Like it was really bad. So we'll wait and see. And if that's the case, maybe just don't overclock it, but we'll see what's going on.
Hey, great to hear, Matt.
So you ready for the not so exciting Intel keynote?
Yeah, let's hear about how boring it was.
They actually had some cool stuff. So I'm going to hit some of the cool stuff, but it doesn't come close to 12 cores and 7 nanometers. So they got up and they said, we have 14 new processors that we're going to be releasing. And they talked about their new Xenons, which are for server farms. And I think people with servers are still really excited about those Xenons, even though 12 cores would be pretty sweet using only 165 watts on the Ryzen 7. So, maybe the Xenon won't stay powerful there, but they talked about that. They're talking about Wi-Fi 6 being built into these processors. Ice Lake is the new name of these chips that are coming out.
Cool.
And at least the desktop ones and the laptop ones are called Ice Lake. So the ones that are currently the 9th generation are Coffee Lake. I believe 7, 8, and 9, or at least 8 and 9 were Coffee Lake, and then these are Ice Lake. And they announced all these big changes, but they're really only coming out for laptops this year. I'm not sure why Ice Lake isn't coming out for desktops, but I think it's because the focus on Ice Lake has been on getting your wattage down and improving things in laptops. So they were all about talking about the laptop. One of the things, they've created a specification for laptops called Project Athena, and it's really all about getting your wattage down, expanding the use of your battery, and Wi-Fi, increasing that connectivity. So these 10th gens, they're built on the 10 nanometer, as I originally talked about, and it's nearly as exciting, although we'd all be screaming 10 nanometers if we hadn't heard about AMD's announcement the day before at 7. So it's interesting. The laptops, they're talking about a focus on artificial intelligence, and so that's kind of cool. They were talking about how the AI built into their processor will be able to look at a picture and smooth it out and automatically tell that's a face and just bring all kinds of improvements. And so, of course, it's a demo and everything looks slick and amazing, but maybe this is an edge. I'd like to know if anybody thinks this is an edge, if they think the baked in artificial intelligence into these chips is really that amazing, and does it make a difference? Or would you rather just go for 12 cores for half the price? So, interesting announcements. And but what's also interesting is AMD. So you've heard of the ARM processors?
Yeah.
Mostly they are the building blocks of chipsets for cell phones, laptops, and have for a long time because they're super, super sippers of electricity.
And rumor has it that the next Apple laptops will be ARM processors. Yeah.
Just Apple, Microsoft is pushing for it too. So you have two giant companies. Also, Amazon is in there. So I think all their Alexas and all those things, they're all going to be running on ARM processors. So the biggest problem with it is that these ARM processors, they're not on the x86. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but you have to code. Architecture.
You have to recompile it.
So you have to totally recompile everything to work on ARM. But it looks like with the ARM processors of the future, Apple's going to it, Microsoft is going to it, Amazon's going to it, and it's really because we're going so mobile. And they're working specifically with 5G, they're working with the like gigabit over Wi-Fi. So it looks like that's the future. I'm hoping that AMD and Intel can stay relevant because competition is awesome.
So let me just translate this for everyone. Just throw out your your laptop right now. You have to buy a new one because
Well,
all of the games will have to be recompiled. It's like when we all switched from 32-bit to 64-bit and you couldn't play any of the new games.
That's right. But I think AMD is going to rule laptops for the next 3 years. I think Intel's really trying hard, but Intel's really got to up their game. Unless they can announce something amazing next year, they're going to be playing catch up, and then ARM just may beat everybody to the punch. So that's my prophecy. ARM's coming. They definitely don't have the same amount of cores or the same kind of gigahertz power that they can push things through. But by the time they get here, I think it's going to be good enough that everybody's just going to switch because it'll be so much more affordable and power saving.
That's cool. Hey, so what's this Zenbook Pro Duo that you were talking about?
So a whole bunch of laptops have been announced at Computex, and this one's kind of funky because it's got 2 4K screens on it.
Cool.
Now, we've seen a Dell come out where it's 2 screens. I don't think it was 4K, but it was still, pretty nice screens. And the bottom screen became a virtual keyboard. To be honest with you, I don't like virtual keyboards. I used to do it when I took my iPad around and took notes on it, and I got pretty good at it. But without that feedback of knowing where my fingers were, I constantly was wrong. It was still better than using my 2 thumbs. Like, I could still type pretty good on it.
Really?
And I forced myself to do it because I only wanted to carry around an iPad, because back in the day, laptops were like giant,
super thick,
that you're carrying around. Nowadays, my laptop is nice and small, and my Surface Pro is fantastic. Absolutely love it. That touchpad keyboard is fantastic. But this one, the Asus Zenbook, it comes down, and half of the keyboard space, the top half, is another 4K screen. And they were showing some really cool things about it. So you could drag your screen from the top of the laptop down and in. So you had one giant continuous screen that could scroll, and that's kind of cool. But then you could also like pull tiles and windows down on the bottom one. So it's like, and I think it's also touchscreen. So you could be typing along, and then you're like, oh, I want to go to my email, and up there, and I'm watching a video down below, so you can have like a video going while you got your notes up top, or vice versa. So like you could literally have Word open, and you could be taking notes and reading along there while your video's like a full screen up top. So pretty cool. It's getting a lot of reviewers are saying it looks awesome. I don't know what that's like for battery.
Well, and the other thing is it just kind of seems like a glorified touch you know how the new MacBook Pros have the touch bar?
Oh, the touch bar is terrible.
And it's just like not useful at all. I mean, it makes the escape key really hard to use. And if I'm going to increase the volume or the brightness, I'd rather just hit a button. But I mean, if you can watch a video on it, I mean, that's cool.
It is cool. So we'll see. The other problem is it pulls the keyboard down to the bottom of the case of your laptop, and so you don't have a wrist rest. So they actually sell a separate wrist rest that comes with it. So now you're packing your power bar, you're packing your laptop, and like a wrist rest. So I don't know.
I think we're gonna call this episode "Wrist Rest" because that's the hardest thing I've heard.
Wrist rest. Wrist rest.
Say it 3 times. Wrist rest.
Asus wrist rest Zenbook. So we also had other Zenbooks which have really cool touchpads. So just like imagine your touchpad on your laptop so that you can move your mouse around, but now make that a 5.6-inch phone screen.
Cool.
I couldn't tell if it was running Windows on it or if it was running, it looked like Android. So maybe it's a form of Windows, but you could put apps and launch apps and kind of look at things. I don't know. I thought it was kind of gimmicky, but still might as well use the space. And how much more expensive could it be? I don't know. But that's another thing that Asus was putting out there that I thought was cool.
Hey, these are all really cool announcements, Matt. Awesome. If you guys have any comments about the Zenbook or the new AMD processors, just let us know in the comments on YouTube. We love getting new subscribers and new people chatting with us. Thank you for subscribing, and please mash that like button on YouTube. Mash it, smash it. And we will talk at you next week.
Bye.